We suffered a great deal of damage. So, the impact was disproportionate on these old coastal woodlands, which are ironically the very popular ones for people to visit. So footpaths were closed, and there was an enormous amount of disruption caused by Darra. But our field services team and our excellent local contractors worked really hard to clear the footpaths and open these places up quite quickly. In fact, it's still ongoing. So these kind of catastrophic, quite damaging events are still quite rare, but they are increasing in frequency. The effort to kind of clear these places up, the heavy machinery, the chainsaws, the cost of doing too much clearance and being too tidy can be quite significant. And we're stood in front of an enormous root plate of one of the Monterey pine that was damaged. We think this was probably one of the Luttrell era trees that George Founds Luttrell planted. We also think this is approaching a champion-sized tree. I measured this tree a few years ago. It had a 6-metre girth, and I think the champion tree is maybe a little bit over 7 metres. So these trees were enormous and of quite significant value to us. We were able to recover some of the timber, which we will use to mill and make things from. But there's such an enormous amount of timber, we would never clear it all up. And in fact, this is incredibly beneficial. One of the often invisible elements of woodland ecology is the amount of dead wood that some of these ecosystems are dependent on, and leaving enormous pieces of dead wood is quite a rare opportunity. These will in time be colonised by deadwood invertebrates, and over the decades will slowly rot down and become incorporated back into the soil. But in the meantime, these big tangles, these big piles of dead wood, are enormously beneficial to initially invertebrates, then deadwood boring insects, and a whole kind of ecosystem that will move in and take advantage of this. Some of these trees, the top has snapped out, but there's a standing column of timber remains there. That's going to be a really useful habitat for woodpeckers and other wood-boring insects. Nature is very good at healing some of the wounds that are inflicted. So we've got to think very carefully about how much tidying up we do, and how careful we are about dealing with this kind of impact. And I think our approach is probably going to be one of allowing nature to do much of the recovery work